Well, in your summary, you're right. Those parts we consider indecent. And this is really deep what you've done here. This is your third to last line. Those parts we consider indecent have an extraordinary part to play in our lives. And when I hear you say that, I hear you say sexuality has an extraordinary part to play in our lives.
Amen.
Yeah. Which is not something that's usually preached.
No.
When we read this, it's more like what Linda was saying, that even those ordinary people in our church have something to do, right? Even the church mouse would be how I would have used to preach it, that the church mouse is the person who comes in on a Wednesday and goes through the pews and makes sure that the papers and the hymnals and everything is put back in its right place. That's what I have called like church mouse work. And it's a humble work, and it's something that's needed, and it's something that brings honor to the whole group. However, when we start looking at it as sexuality, then, and we're ending the Pride month, Gay Pride Month, and coming into our festival here in Long Beach, there's just something about that. Your sexuality plays an extraordinary part in your lives. And it is one of those places that there's been this division over the years.
Yep.
That hopefully is being broken down these days. I like to think so. But when we also think about sexuality, we're talking about attraction. We're talking about the thing that gives us these lifelong unions. We're talking about something that is so deep and intimate that it is this deep sharing with one another. And that does have an extraordinary part in our lives. And we don't talk about that so much in church like we should.
Yes, I agree.
Yeah. You want to say a few more words about this? What, when you wrote that, what did that mean for you to write those words, and what were you thinking?
The idea is that if we always sweep sexuality under the rug, like has been done for centuries, the core of each person is ignored. The core of our personality comes from our sexuality. It's how we began. It's, where life begins is in sexuality. And to ignore sexuality is to ignore the beginning of life, to ignore the purpose of life, and to ignore the driving force of life. Sexuality is who we are, and it starts with Adam and Eve and continues all the way through the present day, even though churches want to ignore it. And it's time for us to get away from that ignorance, from that fear, and realize who we are is based upon our sexuality, and our sexuality determines how we approach life in many ways.
Well spoken.
Well, I think there's one more step to it also, and that's the fact that the church puts shame on the sexuality.
Yeah.
In my growing up, that was the thing that you didn't speak about because it was shameful. That was the thing that you tried within yourselves to kill, was that sexual drive and everything else. That was bad. That was like your total undoing.
It has to be kept behind closed doors.
Yeah.
And what has that caused? It's caused all of the sexual mistreatment of people in the church.
Yeah.
Look at all the scandals that are happening around the world with priests and ministers and denominational leaders being accused of sexuality behind closed doors. And what they're doing is they're raping people.
And I cannot help but be struck that this is being spoken by Paul. who is the one that is often used to bash and batter through the book of Romans, homosexuals or people who love the same gendered folk. And here's Paul saying your sexuality is an important part, a driving force of your life, a driving force of who you are, and that it has
its place.
It has its place.
Yeah. It's very important to who you are.